Welcome to Vlog Thursday 414 Network Discovery and Homelab. Fun stuff. I was working on some network discovery things. I'm playing around, and actually, I should see if it's working because I had ran and plugged it in and set it up just before. Just before I got things going. It seems to be working. So we'll talk about the little device that I unboxed, which is the Shark Jack. It's basic, it's novel, it's fun, and we're gonna play a little bit with it here. It's a kind of cool little tool for being able to it's so it's not, don't worry, it's not in this box, it's plugged in, and my computer's in a different room than where I'm at, so I can't like show it to you and plug it in, or I could, but I'd have to run between rooms, and that's not going to happen today. Anyways, the you can see how anyways you can see it's not very big. Yeah, okay, this video may not be monetized. I don't have any hit things to update you with in terms of where I'm going to be. I kind of got away from doing that because I don't have any planned events that you'll find me at, not yet at least. Matter of fact, I'm trying to commit myself to a few less events this year because yes, the whole too many events and not enough I don't know, value in them, maybe. I don't know. I love meeting people. I'm just trying to pick which events I go to. For example, I didn't go to the Vintage Computer Festival last year, and I regret that because I went to a different event. So I'm still going to events. It's just going to be more like the Vintage Computer Festival and some more hacking events, but I don't have them all lined up yet. So I don't really have that information. I have been publishing a lot more videos, so hopefully that's doing well for people. I will get to the network discovery in a moment, but one of the things I want to mention here is the Signal video. That's gone really well. And it's also proving something, and let me see exactly how many views there are, so we're giving you up-to-the-minute information here. Let's see, go to the dashboard, content. So the Signal video is 24 views away from him being at 20,000 people. So 20,000 people watched it. I did get about probably 60 or 70 messages. This is the phone I used for it, and all kind messages, nothing awful, which has been great. A couple memes, a lot of good conversation with people from around the world, and I thought that was kind of cool. More interesting to me was the messages that I got on this phone were all, people from all over. A lot of people in Europe. That seemed to be like, probably because I released a video later, I got a lot of people from Europe and then a handful from the US as well. What is interesting to me, and I mentioned this in the video, that I will leave this up until further notice. I have on my website a way to contact my actual phone via Signal. 3 people have taken the time to contact me on my actual phone, and I think they just wanted to see if I would reply. So I went ahead and did reply to them, and no big deal. They were just seeing if it was really going to my phone is what they were wondering, which is fine. And it's not like the 50 here. This is the one I said, just go ahead and send me a message on Signal so you can poke at it. But I want to make myself reasonably accessible, but I don't got time for spam. Or people who want to text me or signal me, I should say, not text, signal me a message for tech support. That seems like the less ideal way to do it. But I did have good conversations with some people just on general questions and things like that, which, like I said, I don't mind replying, but it proved my point, is what I was getting at, to have 20,000 people watch it and not have any spam. Like, the bots haven't really figured out how to get Signal going, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it needs a phone number. That is a barrier of entry that is a little bit higher for bots. And I'm thinking that's one of the keys to success is, first, high barrier of entry so it doesn't get flooded with garbage. And second, using a phone number as an identifier is a good way to validate that someone is someone that you know. If I call the number, the person answers the phone. All right, I called. I know this person answers the phone at that number. We can talk on the phone. We can then confirm we're both using Signal and then have an end-to-end encrypted messaging. So I've just been really happy about the whole Signal thing and how that works. Because you're right. The using of a normal phone system via SMS, via just calls, it's so cheap that spammers do it, and the barrier of entry is like really, really inexpensive. I kind of pointed that out in the video as well, because I went and bought a phone number. To buy a phone number costs so little. And it's so inexpensive that that's what keeps the barrier there. Hey, look, someone sent me a message request. Yeah, all right. I just replied to the person. I don't know if the person's watching the live stream or not. They said sing your signal video and just wanted to say hi. So I said hi. So, but like I said, I'm excited, and because I want to make it so people who are actual human beings who say I would like to contact Tom about something have a way to contact me. So, oh, let's see. Oh, okay. Question here. I see. Oh, let me get all the hello. Like and sub, all that fun stuff. Hello, all the way from when I see morning, and I already knew that you are on the opposite side of the planet from me, all the way over in the land down under. All right, Lawrence Systems. I see. Remember, you had a lithium battery-based UPS unit. How's the battery holding up? Having issues putting lead batteries in a wall-mounted cabinet. I've had no problems at all with all the. I believe I have 3 of them, and 2 in my 3. One's in a production system. One's in a lab, and the other one, I don't know if this is production or lab here. Whatever it is you call my studio, I guess because it's at my house, I have to call it my home lab, or is it my home studio? I don't know. Whatever you want to call it. It's working great, and I've had no problems with the battery. I've got an APC, and I did a video. If you type in UPSs, you'll find the other. I did a video on the other ones. I've only ever done like 1 or 2 UPS videos. So you'll find it on there. The name, I think it's Extreme Power. It's on the tip of my tongue. I don't have the login handy, so. Ain't nobody got time for spam. Ah, yes. Yeah, the robocalls and all that fun stuff. I really, if it's an unknown number, I'm not answering it because I already know what it is. I don't get that many calls in general. I actually don't get a ton of spam calls either. There's a few, but they're really not that bad. But my phone's on mute for the majority of the time. I just don't need it that much. I technically don't have a phone number at work. I only set up like video calling via the web. I don't really do phone calls. I mean, sometimes on occasion I do. And for the staff, they often will contact me via Slack. That's our primary messaging at CNWR. So people use just Slack me messages, or we use the huddle feature in Slack quite a bit. We have Zoom as well. If we schedule meetings with people, we like Zoom. Sorry, Teams sucks. And I like the Google Meet. Google Meet works really well. That's my go-to for a lot of the meetings that I have. All right. Let's talk about what I'm playing with here, the Shark Jack. Let's talk about what a Shark Jack is, because that's going to be where we kick off things. I just want to point out that it's just a neat little device. What is the IP address of it? Hold on. (16.24.1). Maybe. That should be the right IP address. Oh, all right. There it is. Cool. Yay. First, let's go ahead and share this out. Details. All right. This is, and they make 2 variations of it. I have this particular one right here, and they also make the cabled one, which is kind of cool. And I like this because it's got a battery in it. Now, good side, bad side. I've learned the battery doesn't last a long time, but that's okay. It doesn't need to last too long. The concept is really simple. This tiny little device, like I said, it's you can get an idea of how big it is right there. It has two modes. Well, three technically, because off is a mode. You can turn it off. You can turn it to armed. You can turn it to payload. Now, armed means I want to go plug this into a jack that I found. You set up the payload on this, and it actually has a web interface. You can do it via SSH. It's just easier to show you via the web interface, but it has a web interface. You set your payloads, and then it pulls the loots. Here's the loot file, and I just had it scan and pull some information. I only had it scanning one thing, so it didn't pull that much information out of here, but it can. It all depends on how you set it up. You build a really simple payload, which is get on this network, boot up, get an address, scan the network with Nmap with a certain parameter. And you can also, and this is kind of an interesting thing to think about, and I didn't go through and finish the payload writing just yet. They have a bunch of stuff in their GitHub, not a bunch, but there's a few things in GitHub. It's a pretty simple setup here, but it has such a unique, simple purpose. I happen to be at a network, and I want to know what's on that network. And maybe I want to know what IP address is available where I'm at. Like, what is the IP if I were to reach out that it reaches out at? You can just plug this in. And if you had the payload set up so it would notify you every time it gets pinged, you could set like a webhook and say, hey, let me know where this webhook came from. And you can stick that into payload. This is a novel red teaming device. It's not exactly blue team, and I'll talk more about blue team in a moment. But it's kind of a novel red team device where I want to be somewhere. I have something that's so tiny, it could easily be mistaken for like a little USB stick. No one would think a whole lot about you having it, unless you're hopefully going into a secure environment where you would be stopped and checked for having such an item. But having a little network jack like this that you can plug in to a jack, find out if the jack works. There's answer right away because it's got some LEDs that blink on it that tell you whether or not the jack works. If you notice that it's got a green color on it, it'll let you know. It can blink out codes without plugging it in, so you'll know whether or not it was able to get an address, whether or not it was able to connect on that port, and then have it reach out, get you the IP, give me a quick scan, and maybe come back later because you're doing some reconnaissance, plug into different ports and make some notes of, scan 1, scan 2, scan 3, and then you can come back later when you want to learn a little bit more about that network. It's just a novel little device. I won it at a hacking competition, so I wanted to play with it. I was going to do a more in-depth video on it. I don't know if I should or not. I don't know how interesting that would be to people. Maybe it is more interesting than I think it is. But I thought it was just kind of novel to goof off with. Let's see. Oh, people are talking about I've never used the UISP. It's not something I've ever messed with. I see people talking about it. I know you can, or at least as far as I know, you can self-host it, but I've never really used it much. But just to round off the whole Shark Jack thing, it is kind of a nice little novel device. I might recommend it if you have a need for something like this. It's definitely among, if you go to hack5.com. By the way, if Matt wants to throw it up there, I think I have some affiliate links because I might play with a few other of their devices. Lawrence.video/hack5. We did set up an affiliate link. So if you do decide to buy some stuff from Hack5 or want to play with it, but I might do some videos on there, not sponsored specifically or anything, but just playing around with some of the different fun things they have over at Hack5, not just the Shark Jack. It's definitely one of those pretty novel tools that they have there. And it can be fun. The whole product list and what they're known for is, at least what I know them for at first, was the Wi-Fi Pineapple stuff. This is the Wi-Fi Pineapple is a really fun, and they have the Wi-Fi Pineapple Enterprise, which is pretty wild. The infamous access point Wi-Fi pen test platform, simple interface that hosts an app ecosystem as seen on Silicon Valley. It's kind of just some fun. They're also really well known for their rubber duckies, so they make some neat things. The Bash Bunny's pretty cool. Plunderbug Land Tap. And they've also partnered with OMG Cables. I believe there's someone else who makes the OMG cables, but they partnered with Hack5 to distribute them. These are kind of cool. They look like standard cables, but they're not. If you haven't seen these are cables to be able to hack phones, but they look just like a normal cable. I think this is just one of those things like be scared about what you plug your charging in. And for $179, you can buy these devices. It was all those theoreticals, like, could we embed some chips to do something more nefarious inside of the little plastic thing for, like the plastic molding of a USB? The answer is yes. And it has a cost of $179. It's just kind of really, really neat. What CPU and memory is it rocking? That's a good question. Let me see if I can get that answer real quick. Now I got to find the password. Hold on. I did not save my SSH key in it. I got the password somewhere. There we go. It is a MediaTek chip. So it is I'll just drop this in a link here. It's a MediaTek. The part number is in here. So for those wondering, that's the CPU that appears to be in it. Novel. It's not a particularly powerful chip, but it doesn't need to be for what it's doing. Just like all those things, like just kind of a fun little toy, a fun thing to play with. Now, the video that I'll be releasing very soon, I got to finish editing, is going to be on this. Let me see. Do I have a copy of it somewhere? So a lot of people are very familiar with what Nmap looks like. So let me share those tabs. And Nmap's nice. It's a good command line tool for being able to, if you want to do Nmap, it's all command line. It's not always popular because of that. People want something more human readable. So what I did was I worked on a video to not just use Nmap, but actually do this. Have Nmap create nice HTML reports. And all this is open source. All this is just free tools you can use. And I give you the command lines to do it. But I wanted to make this a little bit like an easy way for someone to get started with doing network inventory and scanning. And this is my own network. So these are all the computers. These are ports I have open on some of these computers, but it's kind of a simple way. And this is really relatively easy to see. Matter of fact, if we were to do a search for things like Raspberry Pis, you can find the Raspberry Pis I have plugged into the networks. And tells you what ports are open on, which really just one. I have the just port 22. It's all I need open to be able to admin the Raspberry Pi. So pretty simple. But then to go a little step further, I said, why not apply a style sheet to it? And this is the stylized version of it. So it just looks a little bit nicer. Same information, same command, same input file, which is this XML file that I created. So this is the command you use to create an XML file, and then you use a tool to do this. But this video will be published probably early next week. That'll have it done. But it's just really simple tools for being able to do Nmap, create pretty, HTML reports on there. That's what I was working on and finishing up today. But it's a sponsored video, so we're waiting on the sponsor to finish kind of their part of it. What they're doing is they're going to host all the blog posts for it. So it's going to be kind of cool. Because I think it's important to understand what is on your network. That is a huge thing there. So, I am puzzled why. I'm going to log into my pfSense really quick. Oh, that's not my pfSense. This pfSense. I have several pfSenses. I'm trying to figure out why it says that I have a problem. I think the problem's got to be StreamYard, because I have a lot of bandwidth and my ping times right now are really, really low. No packet loss, nothing sucking up bandwidth. I don't know. So I do see once in a while a couple people said I've been caught by lag, but yeah. Last week you said normally you did web content filtering at the client. What do you normally use for this? And that answer is Zorus, Zorus. We've been using that for a number of years. None of them are perfect. If anyone's looking for some amazing, like, oh wow, I'm looking for the perfect, easy to manage solution. Um, this one's not bad, but there is always challenges when you're doing web filtering. So there's always like little hiccups, but they have a nice, smooth process by which you can manage the web filtering on there. Video is poor quality. Yeah, I see. What I get a notice when the essentially either the ping time is having a problem, or maybe it's a connection to StreamYard. But yeah, kind of weird. It said it a couple times that I was having a latency issue. I really don't know why. YouTube has been having issues with live stream. Interesting. Oh, I didn't like Umbrella at all. I didn't like Umbrella. I didn't like DNS Filter. I'm sure what other ones we tried. There was a couple other we tried. I'm trying to remember which ones, but Umbrella was one of them. DNS Filter and Umbrella were the two that come to mind. I feel like there was a third that I can't remember the name of. It was a smaller company. And even since we've been on Zoros, we've tried others and they seem to be worse. So we went back to Zoros. Well, we didn't really switch. We just set up a few test machines and said, this doesn't work very well. Yeah, Zscaler, I mean, a lot of people like Zscaler, but it comes at a cost. Zscaler is a popular solution for that problem, but a very expensive one. And how much do you need to spend? There comes breaking points depending on what your business is and how important you decide web filtering is. It's one of those things like, how much security do you need? Sometimes you want a lot because you are protecting really expensive things. And that's why the bank vaults are how they are. There's stuff people want inside of bank vaults. So bank vaults are big and heavy. We could theoretically put a bank vault on each of our doors and we wouldn't worry about people breaking in our houses. But then you realize that's an irrational idea. And other than maybe certain people, it's not common to have a really, really heavy steel bulletproof door on your house. Maybe you do, but I don't think I need that, at least. Premium YouTuber creator subscription. Yeah. Yeah, the nice thing about Zoros is it's going to do all the browsers. It's going to do all the things on there, not just the browser. So, but yeah. To connect remotely to my home network, what would be the easiest setup to use? Tailscale? Yeah, I'm going to say that Tailscale is probably going to be top tier when it comes to easy. I think Tailscale's great. I don't really have any complaints about the product. Well, I have a worry, a concern, and that is that one day they will not be a good product anymore. But for now, the people in charge have kept the product good. It is been solid. I like them as a company because of that, but I always worry that someone will purchase the company or there will be a leadership change and they will go, look at all these people we convinced to use our product. We're only going to start small. We're going to charge you only $50 a month. Then we'll raise it to 60 and then 100. And then we'll sell to Broadcom, who will raise it to 1,000. So I don't mind building occasionally, out of that convenience factor of, Tailscale is reasonable right now, but I always have a plan B. What if Tailscale doesn't exist? Well, I'll go back to traditional VPN because I do use Tailscale because it's so simple and gets the job done. Well, I mean, my walls are brick, but yeah, a lot of walls are generally made of, we're stick builders here in much of the United States because we have lots of trees we can build houses out of. So we do, but yeah, I mean, I have a brick house, but still, I mean, bank vault, why not just build the whole house out of heavy gauge steel? Then what do you do? Then it's more solid, not rational, but solid. I don't know if they have a reseller program. Also, I don't. One of the things is a lot of people line must go up. We must make more money. Sometimes if the customers try to feel like you're just pushing everything through you to make more money on them, it kind of doesn't give the customer the right impression. So I wouldn't, I don't mind things that don't have reseller programs. There's still things that can be done. I charge mostly for my knowledge, not try to get in between everything. I don't need to be in between every transaction my clients do. There comes a point where you push that to the point where the client goes, you feel like they feel you injecting yourself into the middle of things. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where the balance is on that. Uh for me, I use the default any rule because I don't need to make restrictions. But I mean, I wouldn't if I had to make restrictions, but I just don't have any restrictions I need to make. It's me. I'm the only one who VPNs back into my network. No one else does. But I mean, if we're setting up more advanced networks that need granular control, I would then set up granular control. I don't think we have any. I mean, we've maybe got a couple clients using Tailscale, but not many. So we haven't had to do a lot of Tailscale firewall rules. Advice on getting new clients: get out there and meet people and watch. We have a good inventory of videos. We don't post on there as much anymore, but there's a good inventory of videos on our business technicalities channel, lawrence.video/biz. And we've talked about getting clients. There's no easy answer. Getting clients is hard. So I don't really have any specific suggestions that I haven't already said on those channels. And I bet if you search even my channel, there's some old business videos where I talk about getting clients, and I tell people kind of the same thing. It's all about making connections with people. And there we go. Other people saying that they've watched many of our videos. I don't know when we're going to go back to posting on there. It's kind of a hit and miss thing. But the good news is the videos that are on there, many of the business videos, they're not irrelevant. It's a weird thing sometimes when there's an assumption of, Tom, that business advice is from last year. I can't watch the business advice from last year. And let's extrapolate that to what people usually say is, Tom, that is from that video, insert, whatever time. It can't still be relevant. By the way, the Nmap commands I use today, they've been the same commands for 25 years.
Business advice is not semantically versioned.
Yeah, that's true too.
All right.
Yeah. Any plans on more technology videos? Eventually. What happened to the Homelab show? I put it on hiatus. Jay has other stuff he's got going on, so he hasn't been able to make it. So I'm trying to figure out who I want to do it with. I didn't really want to do it alone, so it's kind of hard finding someone who's consistently has the time to do a regular scheduled thing and wants to put a lot of the work. It's not just show up. Jay actually did a lot of the work on the back end for like just coming up with the ideas and things like that. So because Jay's been really busy doing some other things, he hasn't had time to commit to the show. So that's where we're at with it right now. It's just paused until I figure it out. It's funny going back. We did for years. Jay was included in this as well. And so was Tony. And before Mary retired, she was a big part of the show. If you go through the history and look up Sunday Morning Linux Review, we had that podcast that went for years and years. And one day it didn't, we never were able to get the band back together again when, Mary retired. Tony took another job, but was for years. I haven't talked to Tony that in a while, but he was on a swing shift. So we couldn't predict a time when Tony was going to be able to join us for the show. And we tried to always make sure if it wasn't all of us, we didn't do a show. So when people are on swing shifts, people move, it suddenly became hard to do. So it happens sometimes. That's one of the challenges of when you do a podcast with people. I like doing it with other people, but other people create a big challenge of consistency. I've been lucky enough to run my own business for the last 21 plus years. So I've always been able to really lock in my own schedule. Other people, I get it. They don't run a business. They work for companies that put different demands, and those demands are not always consistent. So it's sometimes a challenge when you're doing these. I have TrueNAS Scale app question. With core jails, you specify the IP address and port, but with Scale, you only specify the port and something like blah, 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 000 for the port. Yeah, you can't. That's the thing. There is no official support for that. I made a video recently on it. That's one of the things. There's not official support for that. I made sure to state that in the video. I don't have an answer. I don't know. No one's commented, and I haven't reached out directly for an official statement to see if it's ever going to be a feature. Could you use Mac VLAN and Docker from the command line and modify the system? Yes. That's why I use the words no official support. TrueNAS runs Linux. So if you understand how to set up extra networks on Docker from the command line, they'll probably work, but they'll probably not survive updates and break. If you have that need, I would suggest not using TrueNAS. I would suggest, even if you want to just build a virtual machine inside of TrueNAS, I would build a dedicated Linux box to run Docker on, because that would probably make more sense. What about bringing a different person each time? I'm fine with that. And I've certainly had guests on, but turns out that's also a coordination problem as well. I have no problem bringing other people on. It just becomes a challenge of coordinating the inventory of people. That is kind of the challenge. No, Hack 5 is still Darren Kitchen. To my knowledge, I don't know of them selling out. Because if you go to Hack 5, the channel, let's go look at their videos real quick here. Right there's Darren Kitchen, still doing Hack 5. I forget her name. She's doing some of the Hack 5 stuff now. Shannon Morris was doing it before, but they've stayed consistent. There's Darren Kitchen. I know Glitch is on there from time to time. There's Shannon Morris. So she was doing them a year ago. Darren was still on there, so I don't remember his name. But yeah, no, they've been doing this a long time. I forgot his name. He's been on there too. He's got his own YouTube channel. His name eludes me. There's a few of these people that also have their own YouTube channels as well. Darren would host some of these people, but yeah, they've been doing this forever. Matter of fact, if you go like to the oldest videos, Darren's been on here for 19 years doing stuff. So that is amazing. Like, he has been doing this, like the early Hack 5 studio stuff. If you remember that 17 years ago, it's still the same people. To my knowledge, he has not sold out at all. Not that I'm aware of. I don't know Darren personally, or I don't really keep up in great detail. Am I selling AI to clients? Nah, I don't know if they ask for it, but no one's, well, the problem with AI is it sucks. It's not even come close to living up to the hype we're promised. Next year, and here we are years of next years later, we all have jobs. We haven't seen the AI apocalypse take our jobs. We've seen it create a lot of garbage, and it certainly does a good job of creating YouTube video titles. There's Tom's use for AI, but it doesn't have a killer app. It does a lot of dumb things. It's fun for silliness. Have it write me a song and rewrite these lyrics, and let's write a parody on something. Does that great. Actual usefulness for AI is kind of limited. And even those videos, and I thought MKBHD, he talked about this. I didn't really watch the whole video, but I get the gist of it I watched like the first few minutes of it, and he's not wrong. So much of the stuff is like cherry picked, and it has that kind of uncanny valley look when you try to produce content or images with it. I think that my summary of using AI for creativity, it's mostly on its own the fast food for creativity. But if you follow me on LinkedIn, I did a post of how to use AI better because I was showing people how I use it to some extent, where I will not just for YouTube stuff, but you ask it questions and you tell it to cite its sources and how it came to that conclusion. I don't just accept any of the AI stuff because it's wrong so many of the times. Matter of fact, one of the things that drives me bananas about AI is I'll be not remembering a ZFS command because I'm trying to do something obscure. AI loves making up ZFS commands that don't exist anywhere. I don't even know how it comes up with this crap. I'm like, give me a command for this. Huh, that's neat. I didn't know you could do that in ZFS. You can't. AI just wants to tell me yes and wants to be nice. I don't know. So it's definitely the other weird thing it does, I'll use it to create something and it just does it wrong. It'll just omit switches and flags, or it'll have unescaped variables. And I'll say the variables are unescaped, and it'll say, "Sorry, let me fix this," and it fixes it. And I'm just like, why? Why are you giving me bad information the first time around? Oh wait, because it's not as cool as everyone thinks it is. I have a data set owned by group editors. However, if one user from the group creates a folder and a share, the other user from the same group cannot add to the created folder. There's a secondary permission. I can't remember. It can be fixed. It's easier if you have it tied to Active Directory, but as long as both people belong to the editors, it should work. There's another flag. If you poke around their forums, you can find it. There's another flag you have to do when you're setting them up. If you follow like the basic permissions video I do, it seemed, as far as I know, it still sets that flag by default. It has made Googling worse. AI has made Google a dumpster fire for search results. Do you still see older networks out there using protocols like Novell's IPX? There was at least one of them that was still using it as of 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. It's been a little while. Not many. It's rare. They actually had some old Novell stuff that I was shocked to see still running. It was like their answer was, this is like the old side of the where they had all these designs. They said there's some old machine that had been running for 20 plus years still connects over that, and so they still had it set up, which I thought was funny. I mean, there's research you can do with AI. The problem is it also creates garbage. So you have to validate any of the findings. I can't take anything that AI says and just assume it's correct. It does give me a lot of good answers. A thing that it actually gets correct that I like is when you're calculating a bunch of silly math things, it's good at math. It's a fancy calculator. The problem I have with AI is it's generally pushed and hyped by people who must make red line go up more infinitely. The infinite growth mindset people who are like, we need more funding. I mean, we're up to, if I'm not mistaken, and I don't keep up with all the AI news, but I think Sam Altman's been asking for nuclear reactors now. Like, oh, for the build the next version, we need a nuclear reactor. Oh, okay. I thought you just needed this or that. And yeah, that's definitely a interesting thing. Now, here's the engineer mindset that I have that I like to talk about when it regards to AI and how you know it's wrong. And you guys can call me out on this, feel free, but this is kind of the engineering mind I have. I was driving a car since I was 16. And I know I'm not a data point of one. Other people have gotten their license here in the United States at the age of 16. And maybe Not everyone's a good driver. So we'll take the top 5% of people because definitely a lot of people are terrible at driving. But generally speaking, many even younger people are far better drivers than the autonomous driving systems. And when you think about it, I'm using just an example of some of these. The training data they use, they've got so many hours of training data between Waymo or Tesla, millions of miles, et cetera, et cetera. Their training data, and by the way, a lot of this comes from some research done by George Hotz, Geo Hotz, the infamous hacker. He had a really good talk he did on this a couple years ago, but he said, if the fact that we can take a human being and with way, way, way less training data, very limited amounts of training data, and they drive a car better than AI with way just small amounts of it, that is the proof that right now we don't understand enough about how the neurons work together in a human brain and how we can take a very small data set, the limited amount of driving someone does between 16 and 18, but then by the time they've driven not even a fraction of the amount of training data that we apply to these models, they're able to outperform those. And you go a step further. What about people who drive Indy cars? We can't get AI. They're not an AI system that can drive an Indy car at the same performance level as a really well-trained human who has become very, very good at that. But that human doesn't have the volume of training data that we're applying AI. So the fact that we keep saying we need more data from an engineering standpoint tells me the model we have is so inefficient that it needs this much data to have an outcome that is still lesser than what we have, which means we have not figured out how to copy how our brains work. There's my rant for those wondering. Ah, yeah, everyone's got lots of data center investments and things like that, but yes. Oh yeah, ChatGPT definitely get a lawyer. I don't remember the lawyer getting jailed. I just remember his case getting thrown out because it produced some fake cases with the real cases. So I don't know that he was in jail, but I do know that the case didn't go well for the lawyer because judges don't like fake cases. When you set up a DMZ networks and PF Sense, do you also configure it with Suricata or just tighter rules? I don't. Uh, I don't really. It depends on my use case. Do I really want to know what's going on in a network? And by the way, I've talked many times about the efficacy of Suricata or Snort just not being that good. So Bloomera is somewhere that I work with, not just they sponsored a video, but I'm friends with Amanda Berlin. She's a detection engineer for Bloomera. And it's become pretty common that all these companies, or not companies, wrong word, all these threat actors are using encryption. To go a step further, it's pretty common, she said, when she's doing detection engineering on threats, and they're doing this at thousands of companies. They're a big company. So she's seeing this at scale. That's her job, is to be a detection engineer for a company that's monitoring for threats. It's pretty common for fully qualified domain names with proper certificates. And that means Suricata and Snort are blind to it. Matter of fact, to go like deeper into this, there was numerous articles lately about Cloudflare tunnels being used as command and control because how do you block it? It's pointing at Cloudflare's infrastructure. Do we block Cloudflare? Then you're going to have a real bad time. So threat actors have caught up with things like Cloudflare tunnels. They've caught up with Let's Encrypt. They've caught up with using fully qualified domain names and encryption, which really destroys the efficacy of things that are trying to watch, like Snort and Suricata. Uh, Contempt of court. Okay, fair enough. That's funny. Getting in contempt of court because you used AI to rate things. So the app should start an MSP for a few small dental offices soon. I'm concerned about legal things, contracts to protect myself from MSP. Do you know how I should get started? Find a lawyer that specializes in contract law and have them write your master service agreement to protect you from liability. Get insurance. You get an errors and omissions insurance if you're worried about liability and being sued. It's part of the liability you carry, and it's not cheap. So heads up on that. I haven't used zero tier in a while. I never disliked it, but I always thought Tailscale was better. But zero tier is definitely not a bad product. Last I checked, I haven't used it recently. Humans have far more brain power experience interpreting large amounts of sensory input as it applies to the real world. Yeah, and it's just like I said, my rant is about we clearly have not copied what's up here, because when we're trying to just dump massive amounts of data, more data than the humans have ever created, just to try to get it to behave like a human, and then it falls short. I mean, it's just going to be really good at some things. You know what this is good at? This does math better than me. Calculators are really good at math. So yes, the fancy computer systems are certainly better at some things, and that was always going to be the case. It's not the same as the, artificial general intelligence that everyone's trying to chase. Any idea when CrowdSec is coming to pfSense, an official add-on? I would not hold my breath that it ever lands there. Because CrowdSec's more about protecting you from inbound things, I don't say it's a more limited use case. Now, I got to do a video on this. We just finished a project for a client. I can imagine CrowdSec on pfSense being useful to them because pfSense sits at the edge of their data center and they host applications behind it. I see that use case where CrowdSec could protect them. That is a niche use case. That is not the everyday use case of pfSense. For home users, unless you're trying to host things with open ports, CrowdSec doesn't provide much value. And I mean, I imagine there's some home users trying to host things on open ports, maybe, but probably their biggest threat is, CrowdSec's going to help some on the same idea, is they don't patch whatever they're hosting and then they get popped. I just tell people, just don't host things. Don't just use a VPN. Quit publicly posting things on the internet. Because if you're not really going to put the time and effort into maintaining it, you're just going to get pwned. What's been your best way to learn network? Resource-wise, I just do it. And I don't have an easier answer to that because I've been doing networking since the 90s. So it's been whatever manual, RFC, forums. Forums are definitely where I spend my forums, other people's forums, Google, finding pages that explain some concept. But because I've been doing networking since the 90s and doing it so long, there's not like, oh, let me reference this particular book. So yeah, lawrence.video/forums, read through a lot of there. Start with a goal. Anytime you're trying to learn something, I always say, start with a goal. What is the thing you want to achieve? You want to get this done. And then start working it from there. What do you need to know to get that done? You need to know this, and you need to know this, and then you go and start chasing those down. This is one of the reasons Homelabs, I see people talk about Homelabs, definitely Homelab is a great place for learning. Any possibility of pfSense TIG stack? I don't know what that means. What's TIG? How do you think it'll be with AI and HIPAA, especially when people want AI to go through patient data, set appointments, pay e-claims, other patients? I think it's a disaster. There's so many things that are some level of disaster with AI. That's just added to the list. Matter of fact, me and my business partner, Jason, were poking at, well, more so him. He was poking at all the boundaries that get broken when you turn AI on. Now they fixed a lot of it, but there was a ton of broken boundaries for security when you turned on some of the Microsoft AI stuff, where it had amazing amount of access to data across your, SharePoint or wherever you have all your Microsoft data, more so than it should. Now, it was also at one point, it had a hard time respecting different data tags that you would add. I think they fixed a lot of it, but they're still a mess. What do you think of the new zone-based rules and UniFi? I think it's a great idea. I think the UniFi is doing a great job on that. I am here for it. I'm here for making those firewall rules because they did not have great firewall rules. That's one of the complaints I've had about their system. And yeah, they've gotten better finally by adding zones. I haven't really done a full deep dive on them. I poked at it and said, hey, this is better. I need to sit down though and do that. Oh, Telegraph Influx TV in Grafana. I don't use it. Not likely I'll ever use it. I don't have a use case for it. So I'm probably not going to do a video on it. I remember looking at it and said, that's cool. But it's not cool enough for me to set up. It wasn't interesting to me. I think some people really want to know more details than I want to know, I guess, maybe about all the different, like how much bandwidth is being used, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't grab me as interesting, so I've never really done it. But there's definitely tutorials out there on it. I've seen a few people make them. Just it doesn't hold my attention, I guess, and I have too many other things to do. The size of the Tailco client has kept you on 0 tier. I've never thought about the size of the Tailco client. I certainly don't know how much bigger it is than 0 tier. Let's see. Did I miss any other questions up here? Trying to make sure I. Oh, yeah. Here's a good one. Matt reminds me of things that I should be promoting. Next week, 45 Drives is coming on the channel for the vlog. So I will promote that because we're going to get your Ceph and ZFS questions ready. Yes. We're going to have Brett Kelly on. I love Brett. He is awesome. And 45 Drives is just fun people, good times. And that's next week's vlog. We set the time already. So for those of you that want to know what time the vlog is, when you schedule a guest, you have to set a time. And so we have a time set. But I love the people at 45 Drives. They're all awesome. And they have all kinds of new products coming out. And I like the fact that they are all open source. So you can go to their GitHub and get all kinds of fun things that they're doing. Not to mention, I love their YouTube channel. I watch their YouTube channel because that's where less so about networking, occasionally about networking, but more so they have really good storage videos over on 45 Drives. So that's a great place to learn more about that. Like they give away that knowledge for free. They're people after my own heart. I believe it is 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Is that I feel like that's the correct time. Is there a place I can look real quick? It's already on the if you go to the site, it's on there. Of course, I could go to the site too. But you should go to the site because it'll be in your time zone. If I go to the site, it's in my time zone. Where do I? Not there. There we go. Oh, apparently it's not showing yet. You'll find it. It'll be posted. Follow me on the socials. If you subscribe to the channel, and it'll give you a notice when it's coming out. VPN over reverse proxy with a domain. I mean, I just said not to publicly expose things. So my recommendation is don't publicly expose. So always VPN over publicly exposed things. If that's the question you're asking. Windows 11 Home Edition can access TrueNAS. To my knowledge, it can access a Windows share, a Samba share, so it shouldn't be a problem. Ooh, what do I think of the new UniFi AI port? It's pretty cool. I think UniFi is doing, and I'm working on a more extensive video right now. I think UniFi is doing a really good job on the UniFi NVR stuff. The way they're architecting it is interesting and also much more scalable because by putting all the need for compute at the camera, or in this case, the UniFi AI port, when you have a camera that doesn't have this feature, but you don't want to replace it, you're lessening the burden on the NVR. So the challenge, because when you're trying to build an NVR system, you have to go and spec out the NVR based on today's needs and maybe tomorrow's growth. That can be a little bit challenging. And it means you also have to have an inventory of models to meet the demands. Like, oh, you're someone who would like to have a lot of this feature or a lot of that feature. Well, you're going to have to buy this big monster NVR, even if you don't want those features today, because the NVR you don't want to have to replace later because of the expense. Well, UniFi's approach is nice. We start with a base NVR that's actually relatively inexpensive. We move all the compute to the available cameras. And so for places you want those extra features, the detection features that they call AI, the machine learning really, but whatever, that feature now is a little bit more expensive per camera, but now you're only putting it into places you want. And because it's being done on camera, it allows you to scale the system quite well with the same base NVR. But for example, you have a few hallways and you're like, I just want basic cameras in those hallways. I don't need those. So I can save some money and buy the less expensive cameras for places you're less worried about it, and then buy the cameras that need the more enhanced detection. Maybe you have a closet where you're like, I don't need face identification in that closet. I just want to know if someone went in there. And so I think from a concept, it's really cool. I love the fact that they're expanding to offer support for existing camera systems, because this was ruling them out a lot, because people go, man, I really like the UniFi system. My NVR broke, but I don't want to replace all my cameras, but I want to get into UniFi. This allows you to transition to UniFi, because replacing all the cameras is a big expense. So if you can replace them gradually over time and get your foot in the door, and the foot in the door is the UniFi NVR. So from a strategy standpoint and from a design standpoint, I really think UniFi is doing a good job. Zero tier can squeeze and open the 2 router to 8 meg flash, while 16 meg might not be enough for tail scale. Huh. Interesting. Do you think Ubiquiti Cloud Gateway Max will be a good choice for the simple home network, assuming that I want to start building a network based on Ubiquiti products? Yeah. Which one did the one I did the video on, and I just want to make sure I'm not conflating. So I will go to the UniFi store. I'll pull up the right model. This one here, I like. $199, I think, is a deal because it has all the features on here. I think this is just a really solid choice. It's got the 2.5 gig, and that price is really good on there. The other compact models aren't bad. They have the Ultra. So this one's not bad. I figured, do they have the comparison chart still? They have it somewhere that you can do a comparison between them so you can see all the features. But yeah, I think these are solid. In stock, there's the thing we want to do. Well, that changes things a lot. This one's not bad, but the only 2 ports on the back might not be good for some people, because some people may want the Wi-Fi integrated. This one's weird. This one's old. I think this is the old one, right? Oh no, well, this was not the oldest bottle. It's sold out anyways. Ultra doesn't have protect. Yeah, you have to look at. That's a good question. Do you need the protect features? No, they just have like I have let me find it real quick here. I've done a video on this before. Pull it up in a second. These are not fast ones. This is the UniFi Express. So I have one. This is my daughter's. Works fine. They play games on it all the time. They have a lot of data going through it. My daughter doesn't have that many devices, just phone and a couple computers. And apparently she's got a Nest Audio and a TV connection to it. Not that many devices, but works perfectly fine. She's been using this for a while. Not long after it came out, because I didn't have a use for it, but you put that in there and she's got a little, hey, why doesn't it show? She's got a Flex Mini to add the extra ports. Works fine though. I mean, it's slow and you'd be right to say it's a little slow to boot, but she doesn't reboot it very often. So it's not been a big deal for her. It just takes I think it does take 2 minutes to boot. Not a big deal. I am going to go a little bit longer, but I need to go get another drink. So I will be back in a minute. Let me throw up the I'm looking for. I always got to remember where I put this. I have a little be right back thing that shows up. That's not it. Where does that go? I've accidentally added that. Whoops. Oh, here we go. Be right back. I have a little countdown timer. there we go. All right, now catching up with questions. Is there a way to show data moving in the UniFi topology map for all data, not just internet? I don't know of any way to do it. So I'm going to go with no. But I don't know a way to do it. So yeah. Tom needs antifreeze. Antifreeze. Actually, it says it's 18 where I'm at. All right. Let's see here. I forgot to ask what happened to AI timestamp your live videos. I haven't seen them in recent videos. It broke, and I don't know why. What happened is it gives timestamps that are outside of the time the video is being done. So let's say I have an hour or 2 hour video. It would give timestamps in the 4 hour mark. It quit working, and I don't know why. It does it. It's inconsistent. Some videos it works on, some videos it don't, and it became such a pain. I stopped doing it. I should probably go check. This is a reminder to see if it's not broken now, or if I keep trying different models, maybe it'll work. But it was really annoying because it doesn't make any sense for it to suddenly break to the point where it's like, oh, let me give you timestamps that don't make any sense and are outside of the video. I'm like, how does it come to that conclusion? What is the issue of fully using capabilities of, for example, Ubiquiti Cloud Gateway Max, assuming that I cannot switch my current router from the inner provider in bridge mode? I mean, if you can't get into bridge mode, you just don't have a public IP. You can still use many of the features, but the VPN is where you're going to have the problem. The VPN expects you to have a public IP address. When you don't, well, that's not going to go well for the VPN. Where's the one I'm looking for here? Hold on. So for example, let me clear this. This does not have a public IP on it because this is behind my own system. This is one of my lab ones that I'm doing the test on. I've been testing it for a while. I have a bunch of devices on it. Works fine. My son's playing games right now, and he's behind this one. But there's no VPN set up because it's behind the firewall. It's actually behind my pfSense firewall. That's why it's got this WAN IP that is odd. The UniFi Pro Max 1 gig, 2.5 gig switches have 2 SHP. Isn't that overkill? It depends on your use case. Overkill. I don't know. Overkill's the only kill. I have more storage than I need. I have more ports than I need, and I have more speed than I need. But I'm okay with that. Today was cold, -49 with the wind chill up in Winnipeg. That's cold for sure. I made I made that video. I also broke the brand. Hold on here. There we go. I've not looked at all at the B580 from Intel, so I have no thoughts on it. You left Wayne County 50 years ago. Wayne County is the county I live in. I like it here. I was actually talking to someone about that today about I like the cold, so I'm okay with it. T620 is a home server. Might be a little expensive on the power bill. So make sure you can afford the electricity that it draws and that it doesn't draw so much electricity that it costs so much that you could just buy something that uses less electricity and performs better. Performs better, at least on a per wattage basis. You know, this is interesting. Let's go through a thought process on this. And this is part of, well, we'll call it the human condition. And there's a quote I like. on this specific thing. Best not mix the past with the present. The present paints the past with gold, and the past paints the present with lead. It's really interesting. It's actually a function of your brain, where you always think for the good old days. And don't get me wrong, I certainly enjoyed the 90s, and it was very novel, and it was much simpler time. So if you're yearning for a simpler time, that's not my brain playing tricks on me. That is definitely true. It was less complicated in many ways in the 90s to do networking because there was just less options and there was less devices. Putting a fridge online was not a concept in the 90s, or a toaster. So the threat model was different. But generally speaking, the human condition means as you go forward in life, you always will look back in the past, and you kind of forget anything bad about the past. So you get nostalgic for it. That is a feeling. So yeah, it's often the good old days are a myth. Essentially, they're not that I didn't enjoy the 90s or anything like that, but I think we have way more things. Now, there's another challenge that I think comes up today that people face of too many options. There were very limited options for how you were going to get into networking, how are you going to get into things. So you had to really buckle down and do a lot to be able to get into the tech industry because it was such a niche and small industry. Now you're facing so many choices. Like there's so much specialization. What part of the tech industry? You don't wear 10 hats like you used to. I wore all the hats as a sysadmin. Now, if I were to do that same position as I had as a tech job in the 90s, I would have several people distributed workload and different specialists for each task, because that's common now, especially in larger enterprise environments. So yeah, kind of interesting. Why you always avoid questions about Plex or Jellyfin? I don't use them. It's not an avoidance. I just say I don't use them. I use MB, and someone will be mad that I'm using MB and not Jellyfin. I had Plex. I bought the permanent license or whatever for Plex. Plex kept giving me problems, and I switched to MB because someone suggested it, and then it worked. And then I was able to watch the shows I wanted to watch with MB. And once I set it all up, I never switched. Matter of fact, the MB system points to a folder called Plex because I'm too lazy to rename it. And that was years and years ago, at least 4 years ago that I switched. So one of those ain't broke, don't fix it. It works for me. It works for my wife, and works for my son. We all have shows we watch with MB. So I don't avoid questions. I just don't use them. So it's not been a big deal. I wish there was a way to change the threshold of what UniFi thinks is high latency. I 100% agree with you on that. That is annoying. And what happens is, I probably should dig into turning it off. I just clear it each time. The reason I get a high latency notice is my backups run. It's really weird because the backups are not that high bandwidth, but whenever there's a bunch of videos I create, they get backed up off site at 1 a.m. And I get a notice. I don't have notices turned on my phone, but UniFi puts a notice out that there was a high latency event. Yeah, it's called backups running, but it doesn't even slow down gaming. You can watch TV while it's going on. So things aren't that detrimented, but the UniFi is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And I think it's what it is they're seeing a latency change. They're like, this is the baseline we established. When the backups run, we see a different baseline. So they send me a notice. UDM Pro brick today. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, there's a lot more. I mean, how many times did we mention Tailscale in the last 20 minutes? There's overlay VPNs. I mean, Hamachi existed, not in the 90s. I don't remember when Hamachi came out, but Hamachi was kind of the first overlay VPN concept. And, overlay VPNs are part of the vernacular now for modern networking here in 2024 going into 2025. So yeah, they're definitely a lot. Yeah, Jellyfin is a fork of MB. I don't know, when did Jellyfin fork? I'm not sure. Maybe someone knows and can look it up for me, or can chat GPT that information for me. Maybe that's why I was using MB at the time, because I think I started 4 years ago. I feel like it was 2019 or 2020 when I switched everything over to MB. So was it forked then? I don't know. I just loaded MB on my Synology and it worked. So I was like, problem solved. Matter of fact, it was like solving the problem on the fly. Here's the thing I want to watch. I can't watch it. What is the quickest path so me and the wife can watch the thing we want to watch? Cool. Load MB. Hey, look, this worked. Wow, that took me less than 15 minutes from the time I said, "How do I load this tool?" to, "Hey, look, I pointed it at the Plex folder and all my shows are just working now." I'm because I don't spend a lot of time in the media world as far as like consuming it. I don't think a lot about Plex and MB and things like that as much. I just want the show, or sometimes the wife wants the show she wants to watch to be watchable. turns out MB works perfectly fine on the Chromecast. I use Chromecast on all my TVs. MB works great on that. Okay, so it's a long time fork. Initial releases, Jellyfin. It may, and maybe this is true. Someone let me know, because like I said, this is you're actually, many of you know more about this than me. I don't know, was there a Jellyfin app available for the Chromecast? Because I use MB on the Chromecast. It works. I don't know if some people said Fire Stick. Okay. So Jellyfin still has a way to go for client apps to still getting better, because MB has a app for the Chromecast, so I use that. I have it on my phone too. I don't do transcoding either. That seems to come up a lot. I once again kind of don't have a use case for it. I either download whatever I'm watching in 1080 or 4K native. My TV plays 4K. My TV can, of course, play 1080, and I feel like a lot of things are still in 1080 for size. And I frequently, if it's just a TV series, I'll probably be watching it in 1080. So yes. So I don't really ever have to reprocess them into another, and I don't care enough to upsample them. So that's, I know some people get into upscaling and like, hey, I can take this 1080 and re-render it and get in there. Actually, the editing tool I use for all my videos is DaVinci Resolve. It has some really good tools for upsampling, and my system that runs all of the things here, including my editing and everything else, it's a Threadripper. I've got a really fancy graphics card, so I can definitely resample and do things quite well with with this system, but I don't really have a need for it as much. Appreciate your time and thought over the years. Thank you very much. Netflix and Prime. I think Prime is 1080 as a standard. Yeah, I think Netflix has an extra fee they charge you if you want to do that. If you want to go a little bit more. Oh yeah, the twin axe connectors, the T connectors in the 90s. T connectors, token ring, and then of course when you're using the twin axe ones, you remember the little the resistors you had to put at the end. I think it was resistors. You had to put them on the end to balance the signal. Yeah, that it's old memories relived to remember all that. Intel 13, does this still have issues with XCPG? What is your recommendation? Selling mini farms in wind turbine? I don't understand that question, so I'm not sure. I have B-Links right now that I'm using with my XCPNG. I've got several other custom builds. Most of them, though, are Ryzen that I'm running with XCPNG. So it's worked on the Intel ones I've tested it on, but I have not done extensive testing on every model of Intel. Oh, I do that absolutely 0 times. Transcode mostly for clients and VPN outside the home network, just because my upload sucks. Only business needs symmetric fiber. Yeah, that is definitely not a use case I have. I'm never not home but want to watch something that is available on MB. When I'm traveling, especially if I'm like I have a camper and I travel sometimes, I don't watch any TV or movies or shows or anything. I read books. So maybe I'm boring like that. My boringness maybe my lack of interest in these things. I do spend more time reading books than I do watching movies or TV. So yeah, I mean, I get people's use case for it, so I'm not knocking your use case. It's just one of the reasons I don't have a use case for it. Someone's allegedly de-authing your Wi-Fi. Well, the solution for that is if you have a modern Wi-Fi system, let me pull up the Wi-Fi settings. PMF, I believe. Yep. Right there's a solution. You have to turn on protected management frames. I'm showing you this inside of UniFi. Whatever wireless device you're using should support protected management frames. So that's the solution for that. The Terminators everywhere, unless you get runaway echo collisions. Those were the days. Oh yeah, yeah. I have on my website a list of books. Oh, this is fun. Span metadata equals books we love. I have found an error on my website. Anyways, you can find this. I'll drop a link for everyone who is interested. The books that I've read, this isn't 100% of them. I think I have all, I'm mostly caught up here. I will say, did I add Dark Wire on here? Oh, Dark Wire's on here. Dark Wire needs to be added. I forgot to add that one. But I have two reasons to go here. Oh, Dark Wire, but it's at the top here. This is probably one of the more recent ones I've read. And I'm focusing on tech books, fiction and things like that. Me reading random fiction and things like that. I do some of that as well. But these are all the books that are in the tech realm that I read that I said, hey, these are good. But I'll read all kinds of random. I don't know. I haven't done too much fiction. I mean, I like all the stuff John Green wrote and stuff like that, but I don't think there's always going to be a crossover between that and other things. I actually like a lot of Cory Doctorow's books. His Red Team Blues is really good. So what is your take on big server with 24 hard drives or more, 500 gig memory, a lot of power usage versus separate hardware, lower power usage, separated other services? Comes down to your use case. For our business clients, we're using big servers with big workload capabilities and things like that. I've talked many times in shown pictures of it. I mean, what I'm running here, let me find the album. Find a picture of it. Hold on. So many pictures. Got to get to the right one. Man, I have so much data sometimes. Here we go. We're getting close. Oh, yeah. Well, here's one of them. This runs almost everything for me. Works perfectly fine. Built-in power supply does its thing. I haven't had a problem with this. So for me, I like the smaller, but that's what works for me. Yeah, Bruce Schneier is definitely brilliant. Good book. I haven't read all of his books, but that most recent one was really good. I thought I had another picture in here of one of the small systems I use. Oh, there it is. Actually, these are the ones. It's not that one. It's this one. Uh, this is still, well, it doesn't have the blue light behind it. That was for pictures and staging. But yeah, this runs most of all my workload because that's for me at the studio here. This is all I need. I never did a video about friend to friend backup sync. I've thought about it, but there's no good software. It's all 100% manual right now. I mean, you just have to find a friend, set up a VPN between you and your friend. Someone mentioned this before, like, would Tailscale be a good solution, but would you want to use granular permissions? Yes and yes. Set up Tailscale between you and your friend, and you now have a way to do an encrypted backup between where you are and where you want your data to be. And then maybe you want to offer that same sharing, but finding another friend with a true NAS, maybe you have one, maybe you don't. That can be the first step, but there's not any like overly simplistic way, like just click here, get backup. It's more like your friend will always be able to, in some way, abuse it. And maybe that's a risk, maybe it's not. If I send my backups to you, you have to allow those backups. And because those backups are being allowed based on a connection, not based on a quota, it makes it the ability where I can just keep stuffing data till maybe you run out of space. I don't really, there's not a lot of restrictions on it. So it's kind of it's a novel thing to do, but I don't know if there's any easy way to do it. You can use SyncThing. That works too. SyncThing. I love SyncThing. That's how I back up my data in real time. I've been using it for 7 or 8 years, and it works really, really well. I mean, the encryption in TrueNAS works really well. Unless you have my keys to my data set, you're not getting that data. End story. So I can send you a copy of all of my data. If I encrypt it, you're not getting it. End of story. So the encryption is solid. That part isn't the challenge. It's just on, it's on the fact that I can stuff data till you're out of data. And maybe you want some of that NAS for yourself because you're like, hey, wait a minute. You said you only needed 3 terabytes of backup and you're up to 50 terabytes of backup. I don't have room for my videos anymore. And so you have an asymmetrical relationship with that person now. I don't know. There's not easy answers. It's stuff you have to kind of think through and do it. I run a VPN, so I've never had to self-host a relay server for SyncThing. I think local AI is awesome. Of the things that come out of AI, the fact that all these companies may at some point deflate the implosion of AI when they suddenly realize, and there's hints that this could happen sooner than later, lots of the private equity and investment firms have started scratching their heads about how much money they're going to put into AI in the future because they're going, y'all are still burning money. You're burning my money, and I would like some of that money back. So as the investment firms realize they're not getting good returns on their investments, AI may or may not implode. On the other good side, we have a lot of local AI, and I think that's awesome. Being able to have a locally self-hosted AI system that you can query for information, even if that information occasionally is wrong that it spits out, is still pretty useful. It actually does a lot of good things. So being able to self-host AI, I think, is amazing. I think it's my favorite thing that has come out of AI. That is correct. It is on their roadmap with HexOS to build that. I hope they succeed. I would love to see some innovation in that space. I'd love to see a one-click backup and quotas and all kinds of fanciness. So yes, that is a roadmap feature they have. Yeah, those little Lenovo PCs. I was gonna say I had one on Reach, but I moved it. It's in the other room right now. Those work great. No complaints on those. Those are they're not a bad choice. Buddy backup and use your quotas to the rescue. Yeah, there's a lot to be said for it. I mean, if you had a simple VPN, simple encryption, and one-click way to set it up, I like that in concept because people are kind of sick of paying cloud bills for everything because the cloud bill only gets bigger. Despite hard, this is when you think about this from a technological standpoint here, technology gets cheaper over time. I have more storage today for less money, even when you adjust for inflation. But the cloud bill goes up every year. Isn't that amazing? It seems to defy other laws of, generally things costing less over time for storage. But even if your storage doesn't go up, the cloud bill does. How does that math? Oh, I know. They need more money. Therefore, they raise prices and you pay them more money and then they're happier until they want more money again. And then you're less happy and they're more happy because they charge you more. So, yeah, cloud backups, not my favorite thing. I'm completely 100% self-aware. Call me out on this. Tom, aren't you sitting from a point of rather privilege by having 3 buildings? Yes. And a data center. So technically 4 locations I can back up to. Yes, completely. I get why, and you should back up your data, and I will complain about the cloud bill on your behalf. But so yes. I get why people are looking for alternatives though. Super considering putting a second NAS at home to back up work as a second offsite office. Yeah, you know, I maybe we'll get around to setting this up. I think a cool concept that we could do. I mean, it's not official, but it kind of happens. Is letting employees back up all their stuff to the office so they don't have to pay cloud bills. I think that's something a reasonable tech company could do. Why not? We have a lot of storage. If we could spare some, that's suddenly becomes a job benefit. You have a private AI chat GPT thing. We have a few of them. They're based on Olama, and we have a bunch of different models. I think we're running, is it Dolphin Mistral? We're running, I can't remember what models we have. We have them at work. We're actually using it for some stuff at work because we don't trust any of our data in these large cloud providers for good reason. So we use locally hosted ones. I had my own Olama system set up. I literally just deleted it the other day because I wasn't using it as much and I wanted to rebuild it. So I just purged it. I'm not afraid to purge things and just rebuild them later. So I'll go through the setup process for Olama at a later date. I'm not using any local AI. If you read through all my stupidity that I have in my AI, my history's mostly dumb things I put in there more than anything else. Give me some puns on this. Give me 5 YouTube titles on this topic. So I don't worry. I don't put my personal data in any of these AIs. And if I have a need for something more sensitive or any client data, that is either A, done at work, or I'll spin up Olama again and punch a bunch of data into it. Yeah, it doesn't take long to set up Olama plus Open Web UI. That's what we're using at work is the Olama with Open Web UI. It's one of those, that was easy. You just pull the model, it grabs it. I have a graphics card sitting around. I thought it was over there. I have one sitting around somewhere. I want to build a dedicated machine for it with a dedicated GPU. I think that might be fun. The one at the office has a dedicated GPU in it to be able to process. It's a Threadripper with, I'll tell you in a second here. We have a Threadripper with a RTX A6000 at work. So ZFS file systems have quotas. but you set, I don't think you can set the quota on a targeted replication. That's why I brought that up. I know they have quotas, but quota on a replication target, I don't think you can apply, because the replication is just that. It's replicating from the other server that set those parameters, and you have to give it root level permissions to write to that server. By the way, big hang up with the buddy system. There's no good way about this. If you had your system taken over and they suddenly have keys to the system, they can, whoever they are who gets on that system, look at those keys and go, hey, I can go delete the backups now because I have root level access. So a big consideration and risk that comes with it is the fact that that's how ZFS replication works. It needs to use root to talk to the other server. That means they have keys to that server. That is the big flaw with the buddy backup system. I don't know how they're going to get around that. I await a solution, but I'm not aware of the solution. Someone can point out that you could do very restrictive commands. Yes, you can actually build. So over SSH, you're only allowed to use commands based on these parameters. So that is a methodology to do it. That's a lot of work. So hopefully that gets done. So they have potential access to the buddy. Yes, they do. Matter of fact, this is kind of a risk you face whenever you're doing replication. If you look at how my system works, when you think about this, is if you go over here to backup credentials. Oh, this is interesting. I thought this system, it says that's the old key. It says, well, let's see what I'm using now. But you have to have SSH keys to be able to get and write the data there. Yeah, video archive to purple. But if it can write to this, okay, I'm using the purple NAS old connection on there. So, all right. Yep. Alternative to use syncing with untrusted node password. That is a completely valid way to do it. Maybe I should do that. I've done syncing videos. Maybe I should do an untrusted node. Have your buddy as an untrusted node. Problem solved. You could then apply quotas. That would be a thing. So you'd be able to, because you're just pointing at a data set, you'd be able to apply the quotas. So that might be a good way to do the buddy backup. Syncing's really nice. I mean, it's not as good as ZFS replication, but it's a solid way to do it. Stonefly NAS devices. Never heard of them. The challenges I faced are probably different when it comes to starting a business. Yes, I have videos on this channel from like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago about starting the business. But most of the videos about business go over on business technicalities. So that's where most of those are. But started the company is a weirder story. I thought about doing that as a whole video if people are interested, like just called, I don't know what to call it other than how I got here, because I've been running a company for over 20 years. But if you go to my website, the one with the broken book link, I do have like just some of the basics on here. But yeah, my first tech job was 95. First sysadmin like enterprise job was 98. IT director by 2000, and I started my company in 2003. Starting a company that long ago meant the challenges were very different than they are today. So something to think about is it's harder to apply all of that to today. I mean, I try to modernize any challenges I faced because I've actually owned several businesses throughout. So I had Lawrence Systems. In addition, was Suburban Electronic Computers. That started in 2005 to 4. I think that was 5. Yeah, 5. I keep thinking it's 2004, but I took the time to look a lot of this up and go through notes and things like that to find it. So 2005, I started rebranding after falling out after 2 years with the business partner I had and launched PC Pickup independently. I didn't have a business partner at all on Lawrence Systems. Suburban Electronics was an existing company, so I bought it. Then we had PC Pickup. Then we had the YouTube channel. Officially, like I registered it, but that was just a launch. It wasn't until 2017 that I decided to build a studio and say, hey, let's go ahead and actually start doing something with this YouTube channel that I said I was going to do something with for 3 years. So I didn't give it up. I just didn't do much for 3 years. I closed my retail store in 2019, and 2023 I merged with CNWR. So 20 years after starting it, I did a merger, and I own part of CNWR too. So here's what I'm doing today. Is TrueNAS Scale better to deploy Plex, image, video, home security, and other apps, or Proxmox? I would say Proxmox doesn't make any sense because you don't really deploy apps on Proxmox. You deploy a virtual machine that you load the apps on. I don't know which one. Better is a real subjective word. Depends on your goal. Do you want to build all the Docker containers yourself? I think that's not a terrible idea. But maybe you want them attached to the NAS because you want to consolidate machines. Then it would be a good idea to do it on TrueNAS. But if you want an independent Docker machine and want it to mount the TrueNAS for storage, but run as a virtual machine in your Proxmox, that's a completely viable solution as well. Would start an MSP in this day and age? I tell people a lot, and this is a video that exists on the current Business Technicalities channel. It's called I Hate My Job is Not a Business Plan. I think some people are oversold on it. I don't necessarily think everyone, it's not a gatekeeping thing. It's the complexity of running a business is hard. And you can sometimes find, and I have like my friend, he makes like $200,000 a year and thinks he wants to start from ground zero at a company, but he also doesn't like the thought of not making $200,000 a year. I was like, I don't know what to tell you, dude. He goes, well, I work too much in my current job to start a new one, but I think I should have my own business. I'm like, you're in your 40s. You really want to start a company right now and deal with employees, deal with taxes, deal with all the legalities that come with it, deal with buying insurance, deal with getting liability, deal with going to all the Chamber of Commerce events or whatever way you want to connect with all the customers and build a sales pipeline. It's a lot. I mean, I get it, but when you compare that to, I don't know what your status is if you're like my friend making 200K, but even if you're making 100K a year, I've told people my job sucks isn't a business plan. I mean, he deals with a lot of BS at his job, but he deals with a lot of BS and he's paid to deal with a lot of BS. So, and by the way, running a business, completely just different BS. FreeNAS hasn't been supported in a long time. You should be on TrueNAS. No required with ZFS, like ZFS allow. ZFS permission, like ZFS allow -u. Yeah, you're giving that user permission to. I feel like replication, though, is someone told me, and maybe I just haven't figured out a way around it. The only way to get replication working, because it needs to talk to the ZFS tool, is to do SSH restrictions on the commands you can run. So specifically, I'm talking about is how it's not that you can't have a user that accesses a data set, but so you can actually use replication with a data set. Well, if you go, this is the problem. It's not just going into a crowded market. There's people that go into crowded markets and win all the time. It's what are you going to do that's different in that crowded market that others aren't doing? What is your value proposition? I'll answer the phone better than the other guy. I'll work twice as hard for half as much than the other guy. I don't know. That's why I tell people I hate my job is not a business plan, because a lot of people tell me, well, I'm just going to charge less money than what my place I used to work for was charging. That's not a winning strategy. Companies will switch to the cheaper company for a while. And I've watched so many companies, so many of them flounder and fail because they tried to offer prices that they told me I was exuberant what I charged, but then they went out of business trying to charge half of what I was charging. There's once you start adding up all of what I pay out, matter of fact, the margin's not as good as I like it to be because of all the insurance and liability and everything else. So yeah, it's more than just crowded markets. It's not having unique value propositions. Not to say that there's not some truly awful companies that can be easily disrupted by the fact that they're not good at what they do. So yeah, it's not easy. There's not an easy answer for any of it. Just think hard before you start a business. I have a question about how you prefer to store Docker data like Graylog. Do you mount the NFS in a VM or in the container? I mount it with I mount NFS with the operating system because it was easier. I was having stupid permission problems doing it in the container. So if you're smarter than me, you could do it in a container. I just decided to do it not in a container and have it mounted by the operating system, and it solved the weird problems I was having. So it was more of there's probably a way to fix this, but I didn't feel like putting a lot of time into it, and I mounted it with the operating system and it worked perfectly fine. And there is the risk that now I've mounted it. So if I had other Docker containers, and there's some risk they would be able to also have access to that. But then again, if you have a Docker container going rogue and trying to do something like that and trying to escape itself, you have completely way different problems. Yeah, like I said, there's a lot to it. It's, I don't know. There's not an easy answer. How do you feel about Ceph versus EFS? We'll probably bring that up on next week's vlog to talk more in depth because the 45 drives people are Ceph experts. But the reality is it's not Ceph versus VFS. There's not a time when I go, which one do I use? Ceph is a very different file system and storage methodology. Ceph is a way more complex. That's the first thing. There's a lot to it. It's a lot harder to manage. Well, not harder. It requires a different level of management. It requires a lot of hardware to get performance out of it. It's designed for scalability. So if you were trying to architect something, and 45 Drives has talked about this, like they have I think they said 38 petabytes of storage. They manage it with Ceph. Ceph is a good way to manage 38 petabytes of storage. Awesome. Home users, rarely, but not, there's always some home user that goes, but I have 20 petabytes of stuff I've collected. That's fine. Most home users don't need it, don't need the complexity, and will have a harder time managing updates and the complexity that comes with Ceph. So it's not for everybody. They're so different from each other. They're not exactly in direct competitors with each other is the best way I could describe it. Advice in planning a wedding. I have none. My second marriage was done at my house. Save the money, buy a house is, if you want, the closest I can come to advice. What are your thoughts on pfSense 2411? Yes, update it. That's all my advice. I haven't had any problems. I updated all the systems to it. It's worked fine. I've had no problems with it. I don't really have, I played around with the new multi-site management. It feels beta still because it's beta. And so I'm going to wait till it gets better. I'd rather deal with business BS than deal with BS that doesn't make sense or is done without thought or care about the future or others. I hope you're not in the United States then, because you will do things in the United States with the government filing taxes, and you'll go, this is dumb and makes no sense. Why are you doing this? And you'll spend a lot of money on an accountant on it, and sometimes lawyers. So you just change where the BS is. I'm just going to be honest. You think corporate life is bad? How bureaucratic do you think the government is? My favorite thing was I got this wonderful IRS notice that I hadn't paid I think at the time it was, I don't know, $12,000 in taxes, and they were going to charge me money for not paying $12,000 in taxes. They also sent me a check for $12,000 because I paid those taxes. These are payroll taxes. I paid the taxes. They couldn't figure out how to apply the check that was in the envelope that was for the payroll taxes. So they cashed the check, didn't apply it to the Lawrence Systems account, mailed me a check back, and then also mailed me a notice that I didn't pay my taxes. So then we had to send the money for the taxes, but they added interest. So then we came up short and had to either choose an option, pay the interest or pay more to someone else to sit on the phone with the government and sort that out. Sometimes you just end up paying the $40 or fees, some minimal amount of fee that was just not worth my time to argue with the government on. I have anyone who's owned a business has dealt with this where they just are a disaster dealing with all the different tax forms. By the way, you spend a lot of money on accountants to do dumb things like file lots of forms for you. And you're like, oh, I'll do it myself. No, you won't. Once you start working on it, you're like, yeah, the boy, I don't even know which law I'm violating now. Have an accountant. And you're like, aren't they expensive? Yes, but they're worth it. I have no interest in using NixOS or K8s. It's just not what I do. So not really. I don't really mess with any of it. Goes outside of the realm what I do. Is that why you close your storefront? Taxes? No, the retail part just sucked. That's the easiest way I can describe it. Retail just wasn't great. And the retail was going downhill by 2019. I said, I'm done with it. It just wasn't worth my time. The business is where we made the money. The retail was like painful, and it was hard to find technicians to work on it because the retail didn't want to pay much. We're not in an area that's very affluent where people had a lot of money. Matter of fact, it was always the same complaint. Why are you going to charge me so much to remove a virus? I can go buy a new computer. Then go buy one. Well, I don't want to buy a new computer because computer prices, especially for the retail market, have really gone down. So when you wanted to tell someone it was like to fix and back up and get their computer to a working state because of whatever they clicked on and got it infected, you would tell them, it's like, I'm going to at least have to charge $100. And they would freak out. $100? It's only a $399 computer. Then I said, well, go buy another one. So I decided retail wasn't for me. Some people figured it out better than I did and seemed to continue with retail. So I'm not saying retail is dead. I'm saying retail was dead in my mind. I am not good at dealing with it. And I had certainly lost my temper with a few people. I don't know about lose my temper, but certainly told them to leave. I had enough. Oh yeah, the industry, the lobby industry that keeps our taxes complicated. That way we facilitate the need for complicated accounting, which requires complicated accountants who charge you lots of money to do it, is back to what I said. If you think the drama is bad in corporate, wait till you try and own a business and deal with all the stupid. Matter of fact, we have crossed bigger and bigger thresholds at CNWR where we have to provide even more paperwork to the government for unemployment and what they refer to in the United States as COBRA, which is a coverage you have to provide for people's benefits. We're a big enough company now, we have to file way more paperwork. We have dedicated paperwork filers now, because at some point you take some of your accounting stuff and you bring it internal because you can control it and make it cheaper. But then you also think you're a tech company that just staffs a person to file paperwork for the government stuff. Yep. That's, as companies get bigger, they eventually, when I worked in corporate, even 20 years ago, we had an entire department that was dedicated to filing all that. And then we paid a third party external company to audit our internal people to validate everything that we did. It's just part of the cost of it. It's stupid. My Homelab setup software wise is XCPNG all the way. It's been my favorite and my go-to. And software wise, I don't run much. Not here, at least. I have my XCPNG system. I I got Fabric, which I play with from time to time. Fabric is a way to interact with a bunch of AI models. I play around with some things. Chasm is pretty novel. If you haven't heard of Chasm, it works really well for sandboxing things. And there's not much else in here. I don't run much at home. This is the one I did the Nmap demo on there. I have a Synology that runs my MB stuff. So yeah, but XCP-ng is my go-to. Could one of your engineers create a simple tutorial on transitioning from local Active Directory to Entra-ID, decommissioning local AD environment? Doubt. I don't think I have anyone else capable of creating videos. It's just not what they do. It's not their skill set. And I don't do it. So that's not a likely video to happen. Yeah, I just don't do that. I don't really care for Windows much. So like maybe there's some demand for Windows videos. I don't know. There's a few people creating some Windows tutorial stuff. I don't know where the demand is for that. Sometimes people ask for it. It's a full-time job creating those videos because Microsoft changes things a lot. So there's a constant, demand for doing it. Is there the skill set of people who will do it? Can they monetize it? Can you get sponsors for it to make it a viable thing to produce YouTube videos on? I don't know. Preferred proxy server tool and why? HA proxy is my go-to. HA proxy just works. It's built into pfSense is really the biggest why. I have pfSense because it sits centrally in my network, of course, being that it's the firewall and does all the routing. Having it control DNS, which it does, and having it control the reverse proxy and the certificates all in one place, all backed up with one config file. So in the off chance that there was a catastrophic failure of my pfSense system, I would simply grab another one, upload the config file, and success, be back up and running. And of course, if I really, really wanted to get fancy, I could set up full high availability with my pfSense. So if one of them failed, I could fail over to the other one. I just don't need that enough. They don't fail that often. Home Assistant video is coming here in December. I found a sponsor for it. So because I'm doing a sponsored video, that should come out sometime. It may even be next week. I do love Home Assistant. This is my Home Assistant is what runs things in my house. Ooh, update. Let's update things while we're sitting here. Project Bluefin. I have no idea what Project Bluefin is. Oh, another Linux distro, because that's what we need. I don't see anything here compelling that makes me think I need this over what I have. So I don't really do distro reviews, so it's not likely that I'll review that. What's the one thing you like most about XCP-ng? Probably the fact that it works really, really well. It works well at scale. It works really well for lab things. Matter of fact, if we look at my lab, which I got to do a video on this. Is pfSense running on here? I can fix that. I like how the system works. I like how the backups work. I also have all the, the way the VLANs work in it. It's really simple to manage networking in here. And we use this in the enterprise space. So it's extremely reliable. It updates very well. It's easy to manage, easy to update. So XCP-ng has been my go-to for all those reasons. Does HA do Alexa stuff? I think you can integrate with Alexa. I don't use Alexa at all, so I can't really answer that question. I'm using everything with mine 100% local. So there's no, well, no, I take that back. There's probably a couple things that connect out to the cloud, but I try to do as much as I can locally here, not third party, not using API calls that go outside. This is all stuff run locally. Even sensors I have for things, the cameras are all run locally. So these are all, current views. The decorations that are controlled, like I have my decoration plug right here, so I can actually turn on and off the cabinet lights, decoration lights for Christmas things. And most of this is run off of Zigbee and Z-Wave. Nabukasu, yes. I was paid to integrate. Okay, that's interesting. You don't understand certificates? I guess I don't understand your question about certificates. They're a big deal to people who want a signed certificate versus a self-signed usually. I'm fine with a lot of things having self-signed certificates, maybe more so than I should be. But in my lab stuff, I mean, I have a reverse proxy, so I can not have them on some things, but there's a lot of stuff that I just don't bother. Like my IPMI. I don't understand why people always want to connect their IPMI to reverse proxies. I'm so rarely in the IPMI. IPMI, like the lights out management on servers, I only go there when something has gone wrong or I'm reloading the operating system, which is usually because something's gone wrong. And so I see people like struggle and go, oh man, I really need to get this I can't stand that, giving a certificate error on my IPMI. I'm like, why? Like, are you in there that much? I don't know. I believe it does support virtual adapters if you want to use them, the SRIOV. I forget, they have a list on the compatibility of what they support. Have you used this to Ratigo? I don't know how to say that, for adding your garage door locally to HA. If I wanted my garage door on HA, on Home Assistant, I would probably do it with a relay, and I don't want my garage door on there. I have limitations. I don't have any locks that are controlled by HA, and I don't have any things like my garage door. In the event that someone were to get into my network, bypass all my security, and get access to my Home Assistant, could they open my garage door? The answer right now is no. And I'm fine with that. There's the limitations. Could someone get into my HA system, Home Assistant, and flicker my lights? Yeah, that'd be annoying. And I would be like, that would annoy me, but that would not be detrimental to the security versus someone going, hey, I somehow was able to, because I have Home Assistant on my phone. And if someone were able to figure out how to get into my Home Assistant via my phone and say, I can open Tom's garage, that would be bad. That's why I don't connect my garage door to it. That becomes, the term is risk tolerance. I have a risk tolerance to someone potentially flickering my lights, which would annoy me. I have a risk intolerance to someone opening my garage door or messing with locks on my house. So you'll find a lack of locks that are connected to Home Assistant or anything. There's limitations to some digital things. I just don't trust them. No one asked, how was my day? My day's going well. My day's coming towards an end, though. I've been doing this for 2 hours. So how often does Home Assistant break? I have one light, one automation, turn it off again, and had one power plug, and it breaks every other update. I'm not using the ESP Home stuff. I've had years of Home Assistant usage, and the only thing to ever break was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. My Synology integration quit working for 12 hours because of a bug. I went in the forums. They said There'll be an update ready as soon as we figure it out. And well, it probably took less than 12 hours. It was just 12 hours because I went to bed and the next morning I updated it and the problem went away. I've not had any problems with this at all. Matter of fact, that's been one of my favorite things about Home Assistant is the fact that it works so well without breaking. Maybe it's because of the choices I made for the things I use, but it's not been broken at all for me. And this is exactly it. When you look at the devices I have attached, you will find is there a way to view these? I can't remember. These are is it the Zigbee or the Z-Wave that has a cool visual? One of them has a cool visual. Z-Wave. I thought that maybe it is a Zigbee. I'm trying to remember where it's at. One of them has a cool, oh, there's visualization. I think it's cool that you can visualize the connections on here. That's just novel. Yeah, it's a Zigbee that has it. There's the little button. This button's sitting on my desk. I like all the Zigbee and Z-Wave stuff. It just works. The kitchen lights. What's this one here? Living room, which is talking to that connects directly to the studio, which makes sense. There's the laundry room water sensor, which is being relayed off of the kitchen cabinets. Interesting. You can see the bridges they built themselves. It's really cool. Studio workbench. Yep, that's what controls the lights that are on my workbench. Lighting control just works really well in it. I don't think you can do this with Z-Wave. I don't think Z-Wave. Yeah, there's nothing in here. Just logs. I don't know. The Z-Wave stuff is really reliable. That's what I have to say about that. Yes, another option is devices that have their own. That is, like I said, I have the little. I have just a Raspberry Pi that this runs on, and it's connecting to everything directly. I have not used Frigate with Coral. I've seen some videos on it. It looks really interesting. I know a few people use it. They like it. Is it the go-to solution? I think it's a popular one. I don't know about a go-to solution. Depends on what level of complexity you want to put into it. Yeah, this is an issue. When you're using third-party stuff, the third-party integrators can sometimes break one. Add Z-Wave JS to left the menu, and you can look at the map. Oh, okay, so Z-Wave JS has an option for that. How do you like your steak cooked? Well, the phrase I would usually use to describe me eating a steak is knock the hide off it, walk it by the fire, throw it on the plate. I like my steak so rare, a good vet might have hope if they've seen it. So yes, I prefer a rare steak, but I'm not much of a meat eater. I like when I eat meat, it's more on the rare side, or I'd like smoked meats, but I don't eat a lot of meat. Frigate loses to Tom's Synology setup. Yeah, there's a reason I'm using Synology. I remember playing around a little bit. Just goes back a few years now, and I said, "Huh, this is cool, but not complete." It's probably the early days of Frigate, and Synology just works. Synology works really well. Synology combined with certain cameras has object detection that then triggers webhooks that set off events inside of my Home Assistant. So I've built out the full integration for everything I want. It works well. I prefer Bitwarden, but I think LastPass may have learned their lesson. Hard to say, but my preference is definitely for Bitwarden. Thank you for all the great videos and support over the years. I'm here for the Homelab, but many of the videos are inspiration for work. Back to work here in Taiwan. Awesome, and thank you very much. You passed out a bit. I am reaching the end of going. My voice is getting a little hoarse. I heard my son open his door, which probably means his next stop is going, Dad, it's pizza time. Because it'd be a late dinner, but we can do that. I'm gonna go and end it here. Thank you all for joining. Awesome having all of you here on the live stream for the last 2 hours and 11 minutes. So I know I did leave for 30 seconds to get a drink. It's time to get another drink. So I'm going to go wander off and probably order a pizza for my son. Thank you all, and see you online, or hit me up in the forums, hit me up on Signal. I've made myself available to say hi. Of course, as I always mention, DMing me is not for tech support. The forums are. So forums, if you have tech support questions, but I don't mind people who want to say hi in other means and reach out to me. I do reply to a lot of people because, I am somewhat social about that. As long as you're bringing up a nerd topic, I'm usually good with that. So, all right. And thanks.